So you think that you can tell us how to live our lives, never questioning the source from which your moral code derives. You think that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised. I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder, what will it take for you to start opening your eyes? I wonder, I wonder,
Yay! And there's all this cheering, and then once upon a time there was a sheet of glass in front of us with like 30 or 35 people on the other side, and they were all cheering and screaming, and there was a mic pointing to them, and
Miss that.
yeah, I missed that too. And I missed you. How are you, Jenna?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
You too. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. Today is Sunday, November 1st, 2020. If you are in the United States and you are over 18 and you are eligible and registered to vote, if you haven't voted already, prepare yourself to vote by Tuesday. That's election day. We have and not just because there's a presidential election, there are House races, Senate races, there are local races, there are issues on the ballots in front of you. And while the Atheist Community of Austin is a nonprofit, nonpartisan educational or corporation supporting positive atheism and the separation of religion and government, we're not here to tell you how to vote. We're just here to encourage you to vote. We've done that both with video messages from the hosts of the various shows and people behind the scene. And we really, from what I've seen so far, the turnout's been amazing. There are, I think it was 65% of everyone who voted in Texas in 2016. More than that has already voted in the early election so far. So, I mean.
And not many people normally vote early, do they?
Yeah, it tends to be mostly one-sided. And it was, I mean, I think we're like 10 times what the, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. I didn't study because I wasn't preparing for politics. I just want to do, this is the Atheist Experience show. So if you have a belief in a God or supernatural or anything like that, that you find is interesting, you can call in and talk to us and tell us what you believe and why. This show is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, which I've already promoted a little bit. If you're watching us live directly above the chat, which probably is that way, I'm going to guess maybe, there's a donate button, and that everything you donate, Google and YouTube take no cut of. It goes directly to us as a nonprofit organization and helps promote this show, Talk Heathen Truth Wanted. And by the way, nonprofits, which I'll be talking about in just a minute. In addition to being able to click the donate link there, you can also get merchandise at bit.ly/AEN merch. And there's coffee cups and shirts and everything else there you can get if you want a little substantive something for your donation. You can also become a member at the YouTube channel right there. There's a join button there, and you can support us at patreon.com/the Atheist Experience. All of that goes to the Atheist Community of Austin to varying degrees. As a reminder, there are 2 Facebook discussion pages that we have been promoting that are new, and they're unofficial. They're run separately, but that's where we're directing conversations and comments. And that is the Facebook groups AXPFG for the Atheist Experience fan group and AXPPFG for the Atheist Experience private fan group. There may actually be 2 P's. Oh, no, that's right. Whew. Those 2 P's confuse me. 2P or not 2P? You should have done it before we went live. And on that note, there's a group of people who make this show possible every single week, a grand group of volunteers, our crew, the best in the business, who try to make sure that we have decent audio, decent video, that everybody gets stuff. Look, Katie's on the phone right now with a potential caller, and some of them are holding up their official host crew member coasters, which we recently sent out. And I have mine here, and Jenna has hers as well. So, it's not like we get nothing out of this. We got coasters. And I'm thrilled. Thank you so much to our producer for doing that and everybody else. The last little announcement I have is that Nonprofits, just the newest episode of Nonprofits aired right before this. Nonprofits is brand new with new hosts, new segments, and it's airing on Sundays at 3:00. So if you watched Talk Heathen earlier and you stepped out to get a sandwich, you can then sit down and you can watch Nonprofits and then come back and have a pre-dinner exploration with myself and Jenna or whoever happens to be on. That's all the announcements. I don't think there's anything else important that's going to possibly be announced in the near future at all. How you doing, Jenna? You got any news?
I do.
Oh, really? Is it big news? Because I thought we were done with the big news.
I'm pregnant.
Yay!
Yeah, it's
Woo.
I'm really excited. Bring another atheist baby into the world.
Yay. Just like another atheist rock.
Exactly right.
I love the fact because so you
Aw.
told us before the show. I'm so thrilled, so happy for you. It's I'm genuinely enthused. But you were talking about how the hormones that go along with it are good, and you're doing good, and everything else. So good news. And if there are callers who have questions, because Jenna's on a journey. Of all of my friends and all of my co-hosts, Jenna's the one that's most obviously and publicly like, yep, I'm on a journey. Bring it. Let's talk. Let's do it. Some of the rest of us are maybe less adventurous. And I know that I want to know, and I know that there are probably callers who want to know what your plans are moving forward, what decisions you guys have made about teaching. How are you going to talk about religion and other stuff? And so if you're a caller and you've got calls like that, Jenna's driving today, which means she's picking who's going to be on from the first call to the last call. And so if you got questions for Jenna, you can call in 512-991-9242 or tiny.cc/callaxp. I think the lines may be full now. So Jenna, are you ready to start taking callers?
Yeah, let's go with this guy Eddie that tried to call last week.
Oh boy.
But it sounds like you want to put Matt's bad arguments against the Christian God to bed once and for all. The moral argument specifically. What's up, Eddie? How are you doing?
Well, first of all, let me start by congratulating Jenna on being pregnant. I hope everything is fine with the baby and everything goes well. Well, last time I called, but it didn't seem to go well because I didn't seem to last a lot. I think Matt took offense at something I said. I don't remember the exact details, but
did you start off by talking about how I had been running my mouth off?
I think it was shooting your mouth off, but yeah, basically
shooting my mouth off. Okay.
Either. Yeah. Okay.
Do you understand that that's a weird objection to launch at someone who has hosted a weekly show for more than 15 years to suggest you've been shooting your mouth off? But go ahead.
Well, yeah, I guess it was.
Let's put the past in the past, and Eddie can take me to task with real good argumentation. Go for it.
Yeah. So this is actually much harder because you've used a version of this argument over a long time. So it's going to be harder for me to put it into syllogistic form. But if I misrepresent you, feel free to just jump in and stop me. Okay?
Oh, that's a guarantee. Like if you misrepresent me, I'm going to correct it. Otherwise, we're wasting time.
All right. So basically, what I understand is your argument boils down to this: the Christian God, at least as most Christians understand the God to be, is incompatible either with the quote immorality we observe or evil we observe, or in the actual world, or the morality that's seen in the Bible. Would that be correct?
No.
That's not what you believe in?
You're saying that my position is that the Christian God generally is understood as incompatible with morality in the Bible. No, I don't think I don't think that biblical morality is sound. I don't think the Christian God exists.
That's not what I asked. Are you saying that if the Christian God exists, his existence is incompatible with the evil we observe?
No. I'm not saying that either. Evil we observe may in fact be compatible with a Christian God. I don't know that a Christian God exists.
Okay, then what are your arguments that you use against slavery? What's the problem with slavery in the Bible or in any other moral evil?
So I'm confused. Is this about whether or not God exists, or is this about what my view on morality is? Because it's the two aren't the same.
Well, he says he wants to fight your moral argument.
Well, he also said he wants to fight my arguments against God. I have exactly one argument against the existence of God. That's the argument from divine hiddenness, which I've used many times. But it's not up to us to present arguments against God. It's up to people to prove that there is a God. And so what I'm saying is that the biblical position on slavery is immoral. Do you agree with me?
No.
So you think it's moral to own people as property and that you can beat them as long as they don't die within a couple of days?
I don't see why. Are you a moral realist? How would that be opposed to?
All I did was ask if you agreed with me that slavery is immoral. I asked if you do you agree with me that owning another person as property is immoral? Do you agree with me that beating another human being as long as they don't die within a couple of days should be unpunishable?
Well, in certain cases, yeah.
In certain cases, yes.
Okay. In what cases is it okay to beat another human being?
When God commands you to.
Okay.
Okay. Can you
How do we
explain
know?
that?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to let Jenna take this because I currently have a bet on whether or not I'm going to yell. And when somebody calls into my show to tell me that I'm wrong about morality, and one of the first things we get to is that they're okay with beating people when their God tells them to, I'm just going to let Jenna take it, and I'll just sit over here quietly. Thanks.
But I don't understand. Sorry.
I know you don't understand. That's the problem. Jenna's getting ready to school you, so sit tight.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'd like to hear from you how you can justify beating someone. I'd like to hear that.
Since you are not a moral realist, right? From what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong.
Let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you.
Yeah, you're the one that just said it was okay to beat people. She's asking you why. And you said when God tells you to.
I believe our guide to what's absolutely moral is someone who, by definition, is absolutely moral, which would be the Christian God.
That's not. I'm asking you how you can justify beating someone.
Well, it depends on the reason. If it's God commanded.
I'd like to know what that reason is.
Well, I just gave one. If God is commanded.
You did give one. You said if God commands it. So how do we know if God commands it?
Well, that's an epistemological question. If we're agreeing that
it doesn't matter. So here, Eddie, I'm going to help you really quick. It doesn't matter what kind of question it is. We are asking questions to see which of our views is most consistent with reality and reason. If you say it's okay to beat people if God says so, then the next question is, how do we tell, like if somebody beats another person, how do we know whether or not God told them to?
The answer, but you have to listen. The answer isn't it's okay to beat people when we perceive God said so. Or when
that's exactly what you just said.
No,
it's not.
I said when God said so.
Yes,
so,
I'm asking you, and we're asking you, how do you know when God says so? How do you tell the difference between somebody who thinks God told them to beat someone and someone who God actually told to beat someone? And now I'll be quiet. Sorry.
Sorry. So that's a good question, but it's unfortunately irrelevant here because you asked me to give a situation in which it would be moral, and I gave an example. I don't need to give an example of how I would distinguish it.
Okay.
I gave an example, right?
Okay, you gave me an example, and let's talk about that example and whether or not that's a legitimate example. Okay, how do we know objectively whether or not a God has instructed you to beat someone? How can I know that?
How is that relevant to the conversation?
Because you're using it as an excuse to beat someone, and I'd like to know proof that this is actually a thing.
That's not what I said. I said a conditional. If God,
I know that Jen is steering, but you're either going to answer the fucking question or we're going to move on. You don't get to just go, how's it relevant? You asserted that if God tells you to beat someone, it's okay. And we asked, how does someone tell the difference between thinking that God wants them to beat someone or allows it and God actually doing it? And you don't get to just say that's irrelevant. That is the foundation of you. You're offered up your justification, and we don't know how you could ever provide that justification. You might as well be saying it's okay to beat people when the voices in my head say so. And we say, how do we know that the voices in your head said so? And you say that's not relevant.
Look, you're not understanding, okay? The question here is simple. Here is a situation.
I asked you, no. I asked you a question. Do you remember that question?
But it's an epistemological question. It's not
I don't care what kind of question is. I'd like to know if you remember what the question is, and I'd like to know why you won't answer it.
Talking about, okay? You don't know what you're talking about, okay?
Okay, well, you know what? Bye, bro. Bye. All right. Let's go.
By the way, for the call screeners, we can add Eddie's list to a timeout of like 3 months, because that's twice where he wants to call in and just tell us we don't understand while he's advocating for a position that he refuses to defend. So
I'd really like to talk to Ulrich in Mexico.
Sweet.
He says the words Matt uses prove God's existence. Example, oh my God.
Oh, cool. Oh my God, we got a caller that wants to use words.
Hi, Ulrich. How are you? What's going on? Ulrich?
Good. Hello?
How can you justify what you're trying to talk about, proving existence of God?
Whenever somebody gets somehow stressed out or annoyed, they say like, oh my God, or Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Because that's a spiritual reality.
No.
What does that mean? It's a spiritual reality.
Yeah, because
What does that mean?
Situation that because usually you protect yourself and you don't need to curse and to call on God. But
no. I get to curse whenever I want. And I'm not, if I say, oh my God, I'm not calling on a God. I'm using a statement. Just like if I say there's gremlins in my car's engine, that doesn't mean there's actually gremlins.
Yeah, but you probably never in your life say there are gremlins in your car's engine. But
yes, I have. Yes, I have. And when I'm a software quality assurance engineer and I say there are bugs in the software, that doesn't mean there are literal creepy crawlies in the software. Some things are statements where you don't take them literally. And if you're trying to say that we secretly believe in God because I've said, oh my God, I've said lots of things and appealed to lots of things that I don't believe in.
Like shit.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I do believe in God, but that you live in a spiritual reality.
You're wrong.
Okay.
So if somebody says, oh my God, that doesn't prove God exists any more than someone saying, I saw a unicorn or I was abducted by aliens. If somebody says they were abducted by aliens, they genuinely believe there are aliens, but their statement about aliens does not prove aliens. It would be worse if they said, yep, I was abducted by aliens last night, did not mean it literally, and you tried to argue that because they used that, therefore aliens are in fact real.
But why would you then call Jesus Christ?
I didn't call Jesus Christ.
It doesn't make sense.
So I'll tell you why. Why do I call Jesus Christ? Can I tell you why I do? Is because I have been raised around that phrase, and that is something that people have said when in stress, kind of like yelling out the word shit or fuck or something. These are just words that you yell out, and so God doesn't all of a sudden. Why does God more magical than shit?
When something goes wrong and I say rats, does that mean I really think rats did it? You should learn what interjections are. Interjection for excitement and emotion. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yeah. If you think that someone using a word proves that something exists, then everything exists, because we've talked about unicorns and Bigfoot and Loch Ness and ghosts and all of those things.
No, but you're twisting my argument. I don't say things exist just because somebody says it. But if you constantly, like every day, whenever you
No, sir, you're wrong. It doesn't matter if I said, oh my God, every second for the rest of my life. That doesn't mean a God exists.
But why would you do it then?
Why does it matter?
For the same reason that I would say rats or fuck or shit or whatever. It is an expression. It is a common colloquialism that has been ingrained into our society that people do this. There's a reason why people curse and why they curse in particular ways. It is about the society that you grew up in and what you were indoctrinated to say when something goes wrong. It has nothing to do with whether or not a God actually exists. This is a waste of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? When you can define the spiritual realm, go ahead and call back and we will.
Or show some proof besides somebody said something.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Lester. It says that you waited for about an hour last week and you want to talk about objective morality. It sounds like we're on a trend.
Yay. Well, at least we got to him, Lester, way earlier this time. So welcome, Lester.
Hey, guys. Thank you. So I want to talk about the existence of objective moral values. I want to start with this example. So the Holocaust, do we all agree that it's bad, independent of anyone's personal beliefs?
That the fact that the Holocaust happened was bad?
No, what happened? Is it bad? It doesn't matter what the Nazis.
What happened? What are you talking about?
You're literally asking us, do we all agree that? So you're literally asking if each of our subjective assessments. No, you are literally asking if we all agree, which is asking if our individual subjective assessments are in agreement. Yes, I agree with you. The Holocaust was wrong.
Doesn't matter what others say? Does it change the fact that it's wrong?
If they made an argument for why it wasn't wrong, they could potentially convince me or anyone else.
The fact is that the Nazis didn't believe it was wrong. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying that it's independent. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be bad. It's going to be
no.
Independent.
What Jenna was just pointing out is that the Nazis did not think it was bad. So you think it's bad. I think it's bad. Jenna thinks it's bad. The Nazis did not think it was bad. So we don't have uniform agreement.
That's why
they did not agree with you.
Of their personal beliefs. I know. I mentioned that it's independent of their personal beliefs.
Okay.
So do you agree with that? Do you agree that it's always going to be bad?
So no, as I've said before, you're asking for a subjective opinion and trying to paint it as if it's objective fact. I'm in agreement with you that it was bad. I don't know what difference does it make if it is objectively bad or subjectively bad? How would you show that it's objectively bad?
Worldview. Objectively bad, that means like independent of their belief.
I know what it means. I've lectured on this subject for 15 years.
Hey, Lester.
I'm asking you, what objective standard can you point to show that it was bad?
Yeah, I was going to get to that point. And naturalist point of view, I mean, worldview, you wouldn't have a foundation for objective moral values.
You're wrong.
But as a Christian, I do.
No, you're wrong. So as a Christian, you don't. As a Christian, you cannot demonstrate that your God exists or that it has any view on morality or that your God's view on morality is correct. You can demonstrate none of those things.
Well,
hang on.
Not the topic right now.
Hang on. I have a foundation ascribed as well-being. It is subjective about whether or not we care about well-being. But if you and I agree that we do care about well-being, then we can then make objective assessments. And we can then say that the Holocaust was objectively wrong when we use our subjectively agreed upon foundation of well-being as the standard.
Yeah, so you agree with me that there are objective moral values.
You're not listening to me, so I'm done.
Yeah, he's really not listening. Sorry, bro.
Sorry you waited for your turn to talk.
I'm sorry. I mean, I really am sorry. I really hope that you can just do a little more studying and maybe listen to that call over again and try to figure out what went wrong.
One of the things that's really simple is he's convinced that there's a God who is a standard, but I'm not convinced that that God's a standard. So until you convince me that God's a standard, then we don't share a standard. However, Lester and I would probably agree that the well-being of humans is a good standard to evaluate consequences of actions. And so we can get to agreement on, hey, the Holocaust was wrong because it's in violation of this standard that we agree on. And yet he wants to put up a different standard that we don't agree on, that he can't prove and can't demonstrate. Here's the important thing. If you haven't dug in too much on moral philosophy and you don't know all the ins and outs, as far as I can tell, in the decade and a half that I've been doing this, there is no objection to secular moral systems that is in any way solved by appealing to a God. It doesn't fix a thing. You can't say that God said it. You can't say that because God said it. Nothing. There's no fix there.
Yeah. Next we have Anne in Turkey, and it says that she's worried that skepticism may trigger mental health issues, I guess.
Hey, Anne, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you guys?
I'm doing well.
Pretty good.
Yes.
Why are you worried about skepticism?
I worry about skepticism because I'm 48 years old now. And when I was 24, I had a psychotic episode which lasted for a few days. So in those days, beforehand, I was sleep deprived and thinking a lot about why I came to this world, why do I have a consciousness, why all these questions. And then these questions just blurred in my mind. And then what doctors call me, I had an atypic psychosis. So after that, I did work on science. I'm a researcher now. And I'm going to hopefully work on philosophy of science. I'm directing it towards more philosophy, to the questions back again.
Okay. Why are you attaching this psychotic episode to skepticism because you were thinking about things at the time? Are you saying that that's why you think it happened?
It was probably thinking a lot.
Why do you think that thinking a lot caused your psychotic episode?
combined with sleep deprivation, I guess.
I can see sleep deprivation. I mean, I'm not a doctor.
I mean, if you're deprived of sleep and suffering anxiety in addition, I mean, so first of all, skepticism just means I'm not going to believe something until there's sufficient evidence for it. That's it. I don't know how that could cause or trigger mental health issues.
It wouldn't. If I guess I learn it well. So,
yeah, I think the only mental health issues I could see skepticism amplifying seriously would be a sense of anxiety and dread as you begin to recognize that the right answer to more questions is I don't know. And so if you apply skepticism and you're like, I don't know what the answer to this is, I don't know what the answer to this is, I don't know what the answer is, that can be anxiety inducing, but it's not the skepticism that's inducing the anxiety. It is the notion that you should have answers to this. Just like if I convince someone that there's no heaven to go to, that's not me doing harm to them. That's me undoing harm because someone convinced them that there's a heaven for them to go to. And if somebody convinced you that you should know the answer to why there's something rather than nothing, then the honest skeptical recognition that you don't know the answer can be stressful. But the stress is caused by the notion that you should have an answer.
But that's also signifying that there's change. It's signifying that there is stress, so there's change, so you're growing. So once you kind of get through that, like it sounds like this happened when you were much younger. Did it happen again?
No, it didn't happen again. No.
So it sounds like maybe the skepticism, it was kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. You know, it kind of maybe hurts for a second because it's a shock and it's different. But do you think that maybe you think it's a good thing now?
Yes, I think so, and I think Matt has the point correctly, I guess, because I was thinking a lot about why I came to this world, why do I have some consciousness, right. But these questions do not have answer that I can have now.
I don't think those questions are good questions. To say, why do I exist? Well, technically, I exist because my parents had sex. Mm-hmm. To suggest, oh, no, but what I mean is, why did the universe choose to bring me forth? I don't think that's an accurate description of what happened. To say, oh, but what's my meaning and purpose in life? I don't think we are born with some externally imposed meaning or purpose. We give our life meaning and purpose that way. So it's the question itself, why am I here? Seems to me that the only answer is, that's not a why question. You get to make of your life whatever you want within reasonable limits.
Yeah, it seems like it's not what you were thinking. It's not how you were thinking, but it's what you were thinking about.
It may be the biggest reason that people are religious, because religions have convinced so many people, even if they haven't, like, religions convince people, hey, maybe you're not convinced there's a God, but surely there must be some reason why you're here. Everything just doesn't happen. It's not all random. So there must be some reason why you're here. And now they've created a void which doesn't exist. And they can fill it with their God. People, you know, my favorite statement that I ever came up with, which was a twist on somebody else's, because they said, you know, religion poisons you and then offers you the antidote. And I said, no, that's wrong. Religion convinces you you're poisoned when you're not. And then they give you their version of a homeopathic remedy. There's nothing to cure, and the homeopathic remedy can't do anything, but it can certainly convince you that it did, just like a placebo.
It's like they put the weight on you, and they're like, hey, we'll take that off.
Yeah.
Why have it there?
Or in the case of Christianity and salvation, it's like God threw you overboard and is dangling Jesus as a life raft.
Yeah. Life is so much better without all that stress.
Amen. Oh my gosh, I said amen. That guy in Mexico is going to have an aneurysm.
Obviously, there's a God.
Yeah, probably because he doesn't know that amen just means agreement and isn't necessarily religious, but okay.
Somebody's going to clip what I just said. All right, let's...
How else can we help? Guys? What do you think we can do? And I don't know what resources you have available in Turkey. I don't know if you can, you know, talk to somebody from the Psychotherapist Project or get counseling from Recovering from Religion. I think you can. I think they'll as long as you can muddle through in English, they'll...
Yeah.
I know they have different locations.
Although not very easy, not very easy, especially with the political climate right now in Turkey. It's not very easy to find secular people talking freely anymore.
Yeah.
Is the internet
Kind of stuff.
available to you often that you can maybe get on, find some forums or something?
Well, she found us.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Yes.
There you go.
Yes. Okay.
All right, Anne. Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, if there's anything we can do, you guys, we should remind people, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, Jenna, all the co-hosts involved. I'm not sure that Shannon's actually on that mailing list yet because a message came in for her that Shannon didn't get, but I've fixed that a little bit and we'll take those steps. I'm glad that came up. But yes, you can email us. That's one point of contact. We can't promise to answer everything, although Justin does a great job of trying to get to every email that comes in. And so if you didn't get through on the phone, or you didn't want to get through on the phone, or you didn't want to talk about your issue on the phone, I'm going to recommend the same things: recoveringfromreligion.org, the ACA Discord, which they can put a link up to on there, and emailing tv@atheist-community.org, in addition to the Facebook groups, to get, there's a community here. You don't just have to, if you email and say, I really want Matt to help me answer this question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a dick, but that's unlikely to happen just because of the volume of email and everybody else's business. But if you email in for help, then all of a sudden I can answer, Jenna can answer, Jim can answer, Justin can answer, or we can say, you know what? We know somebody else who's had something similar and can direct you to other resources.
So that sounds like a good idea. Let's talk to Jesus in California. Wants to discuss a being called God.
Cool. How you doing, Jesus?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I was calling to see, just to have a discussion on basically theism, the theistic worldview, and the atheist worldview, and basically discussing whether or not a being known as God exists. Now, if you want, I can give you a very specific description of
that'd be great,
God, and then we can. So I believe that God is a being that exists outside of time, space, and matter, that is personal and is intelligent enough to design the universe. And
you're putting a lot on it.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So it's very specific.
No. Trust me. I appreciate the definition. I have one clarification question before we get started. You talk about this God that exists outside of time. Does it outside of space, time, and matter? Does the God you believe in manifest within space, time, and matter in any detectable way?
Through what I believe is through design of the.
That's not a manifestation. That's an inference from you. Does your God interact with reality in any way that we can detect?
Objectively.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that my evidence would be according to the design that.
I'm not asking for evidence right now. Here's, maybe this is confusing. Yeah. I realize that you believe that there is a God and that you think this God designed the universe, and so you see evidence of this God within the design of the universe. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, does your God, which you think exists outside of space, time, and matter, manifest, do things within reality that we can detect?
Yeah, well, yeah, you're asking if he does things by that. Oh, okay, then in that case, let me add on to it. Sustains the universe. There we go. So
sustaining the universe does not mean that he does anything that does not mean that he manifests in reality in a detectable way. So, there could be ghosts. Here, let me try and explain this. Let's imagine for a second that there are actually ghosts. I don't believe that there are ghosts, but let's imagine that there are. But those ghosts are outside of time, space, and matter, and they don't interact with reality at all. If that's the case, then we cannot have any good reason to believe there are ghosts because there is no interaction with reality. Does your God interact with reality in a detectable way?
Well, the best way I could say would be according to the sustaining the universe through design.
That's not an interaction with reality in a detectable way. Your God doesn't do anything. He doesn't talk to people. He doesn't interact with people. He doesn't answer prayer. He doesn't heal the sick. He doesn't do, does your God
What
do
is the
anything
design?
that we could detect? Because if you just say you're convinced that you see God, evidence of God in design, that's not interaction. That's your inference.
What are you defining as design? What is design?
Well, for example, let's see, the cell. Our cells and our DNA are actual. It's code.
Oh.
Random.
Cells aren't code. Cells aren't code.
Yes,
No, sir. Cells are not code. Even if you were to try to argue that DNA was a code, which I would argue that is an analogy and is not evidence of a mind directing, cells, sir, are not code. A cell is an actual. Never mind. I'm done.
No. Well,
if I'm trying to correct you so that we can make progress on a definition, and all you're going to do is talk over me, I don't see any reason to keep going. I'm asking a simple question. Does your God manifest, interact with reality in any detectable way? Does he answer prayer? Does he heal the sick? Does he talk to people? Does he give people instruction? Does he give them gifts of prophecy? Anyway.
Okay. I'll address the cell part. You are correct. Cells are not code.
I know I'm correct.
I was mistaken. But however, DNA is.
DNA is not a code in the sense that it is from one mind to another.
You're not answering his question.
DNA is a set of chemicals that are capable of self-reproduction in a specific paradigm. And that's not the question that I asked, because you cannot demonstrate that DNA being able to self-replicate is necessarily an instantiation of a God interacting with reality. That's just an inference on your part. Does your God do anything at all that we could detect?
I believe, according to the evidence of design, for example, like I said.
No. You're saying that the only reason that you think that there's a God is because cells have codes?
No, that's not the only reason. That's just one observable reason. I
didn't ask you ever for any fucking reasons at all. I asked you, does your God interact with? How many times do I have to ask the exact same question?
He's convinced,
and you have not said yes, and you have not said no. Does your God manifest in any detectable way in reality? Does he do things that we can identify?
Yes.
What?
On the design thing.
Oh my fucking God.
Like I said,
because he's convinced that design is evidence.
Well, he's wrong, but
so how do we explain that?
I'm trying. Design is not interaction. What is your God doing today that we can detect? Because he ain't making DNA.
So then what is your evidence that DNA designs itself?
Who said that?
Yeah, who said that?
Well, you're making
Don't assume.
The assumption that. Well, okay, fine. So you said that God does not create, that does not design DNA.
No, I did not say that. You don't seem to be listening very carefully. I said, what is your God doing today? Because he's not designing DNA today. DNA is done. It exists, independent of whether your God did it or whether it is a naturalistic chemical process, which is what the evidence points to. I asked, what's your God doing today?
And I'm answering.
No, you're not.
You're trying to tell us what we think. And I'd really, really like you to stop telling us what we think and try to tell us how we can objectively tell that there's a God, because we don't believe it anymore. We've looked into this. We have spent a lot of time on this. Matt spent a lot more time on this than I have, and we have not found any answers. So what is the answer that you can give us that we can objectively say, yes, there is a God? Because I look out and I see design, and it's not what I disagree with you. So that is not objective.
Okay, well, let's go with the beginning. Do you agree that there was a beginning to the universe, like the Big Bang, from a point of singularity?
I agree that the current best explanation from science is Big Bang cosmology. Whether or not that actually happened or whether or not there's some way to demonstrate that is a separate issue, but that's the current best scientific explanation for the origin of the universe.
So then do you agree that according to logic, either the universe had a beginning from nothing or an unmoved mover?
Or there's fairies.
or something else. So if you don't get to say from logic if you do not make an argument that is actually consistent with logic. For it to be consistent with logic, you have to have a true dichotomy. And to get to that, what you would say is, are you in agreement that the universe was either intentionally created by an intelligent agent or that it was not? Because that is a direct dichotomy. The universe was either created by an intelligent agent or it was not created by an intelligent agent. I would agree that that is a true dichotomy, but you don't get to pick you don't get to put God up against one portion of the not. It's yes or no.
No, I'm leading to it. That's why I'm leading to it.
No, sir. You weren't. What you did was you put up either God did it or it designed itself. That's not a true dichotomy. So either an intelligent agent designed the universe or an intelligent agent did not design the universe. That is a true dichotomy.
So it's either true or it isn't then.
Everything is either true or it's not true. Everything. That's what logic is.
Okay. Right. And I agree with you. I agree with you.
So, and we're saying we don't know.
So I'm going to give up on ever getting an answer about whether God does anything detectable in reality. But if you're going to talk about, hey, how do you explain the origin of the universe? The correct answer may be there is no explanation currently for the origin of the universe. And if you think you can explain it with a God, you have to provide the proof and the evidence to meet the burden of that claim.
It sounds to me like you have been given a lot to think about, Jesus, and I think that you should take what Matt said and go learn a little bit more about dichotomies. I'm going to as well. There's a lot that we can learn. So instead of asserting that we all have all the answers, let's listen to each other and consider what everyone has to say, because that's how we know what's true, is we listen and we determine. So thank you, Jesus, for calling.
Can I just say one last thing before?
Sure.
Hello? Yeah. Okay. So I'll just say this. If I believe the atheist worldview were true, I would be an atheist.
There is no atheist.
There is no atheist worldview. Atheism is simply not being convinced that a God exists. Everything else about my worldview is independent of that. You and I'm gonna guess here, Jesus. Do you believe that we're on a planet that is round, like an oblate spheroid, and not flat? Me too. Yeah, and do you believe that planet orbits the sun instead of the other way around? Do you think the sun goes around the Earth, or do you think the Earth goes around the sun?
I believe the Earth goes around the sun.
Me too. So there's two things that we believe. Neither one of them has anything to do with whether or not I'm a God, and they're both part of both of our worldviews. The difference here is that I think I'm in a shared reality with other people. I'm assuming you think you're in a shared reality with other people, right?
Right.
And when somebody says, why is there something rather than nothing? My answer is, I don't know. And your answer is?
Obviously God.
So
how is that obvious?
And when you come forward and you say, obviously God, first of all, that's a dishonest response, because you're trying to poison the well by claiming it's obvious and implying that the rest of us just aren't seeing the obvious. And so when we then ask, please give us your evidence for God, I'm very thrilled that you're one of the only people who came in and offered a definition of God. However, you included in your definition that God exists outside of time, space, and matter. Well, first of all, I have no reason to think that there is such a place or such a possibility as being outside time, space, and matter. But by definition, nothing exists outside of time, because outside of time is not existence. It makes no sense to say something exists for 0 seconds. Okay? If it doesn't exist with inside time, existence is necessarily temporal. Nothing exists for 0 seconds. Now, the best you could do is say God exists in a different time-space reality that is a meta container for our time-space reality, and then you would have solved that problem that I just raised. The problem is, how do you demonstrate that there's that space exists, that there's any sort of meta container? You can't, which is why I asked about the one and only thing that matters. How does your God manifest in reality? Because if you are claiming to detect a God that is undetectable, you are definitionally irrational. And if you are claiming to detect a God that is detectable, then you should be presenting those detections to us and not simply asserting that it's obvious or that you're convinced that a God created DNA. This is how we go about demonstrating the truth of propositions. You provide evidence for your belief that the reason there's something rather than nothing is that God did it. And until you do that, I am by definition absolutely right and reasonable to say that my answer is still, I don't know, because you haven't met your burden of proof.
But you said the atheist worldview is not true. How can that be true?
That's not, no, sir. You just don't listen. Neither one of us said the atheist worldview isn't true. We said there is no such thing as an atheist worldview. Atheism is a position on a single issue. If you're not going to listen, I'm done talking.
I'm asking because is that not an objection?
No, you're not asking. You're not listening. I just explained in great detail. You should go back and listen to the last minute or two over and over and over again, because your immediate response was to accuse me of saying the atheist worldview is false, which is fucking stupid and shows that you weren't listening.
Yeah, I dropped him. He's going to go back and listen or call back or something. Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. That was actually my favorite call today so far. That was productive.
And it would be nice if more people would actually define their God, because the more specifics you put into that definition, the easier it is to demolish. You would think if it were real, then the more you define it, the easier it is to demonstrate that it actually exists or that it doesn't exist. And that's why the vagaries in the God definitions are the only thing keeping religion alive. As soon as they get to specifics, they lose.
Right. He listed off like 3 or 4 things at the very, very beginning. He exists outside of space and time, and this, and this, and this. It's like, okay, well, let's stop at one. Let's stop at the first one before we go on to the others. So maybe take it one thing at a time. Listen to what Matt said over and over again. Like he said, I'm probably going to as well.
Or no, you know, go listen to some other people. I'm not here just saying, oh, I'm right and you're wrong. But if this is a call-in show and we're having a discussion, and if in the course of the discussion I ask specific questions, and you are completely unable to answer them, that doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that you weren't prepared for this particular conversation. So go off and prepare and call again.
Yeah.
It's good. It's easy.
Yeah. Thank you again for calling, Jesus. So let's talk. I'm kind of curious what Anthony has to say in Florida. Says that you want to call us out for hypocrisy about lack of belief in God. What are we cherry picking?
Yeah, hi guys. I've called before, so thanks for putting me back on. Hope to have a civil conversation.
Sure.
Hypocrisy. I'll start this way. This goes for both Jenna and Matt. Would you vote for a politician who believes in God, who's like actively?
Yes, I just did. I voted just the other day, and since the two primary, both the Republican and the Democrat claim to believe in God, then I voted for one of the two of them, and so I voted for someone who claims to believe in God, as I've done every time I've voted.
Mm-hmm.
So you have no issue with that. So would you vote?
No.
Santa Claus or the Easter?
No.
Hang on, Anthony. We didn't say we didn't have an issue with it. You asked us if we would, and I would, and I did. That is not the one and only criteria on which I base my vote. And by the way, there are atheists who I would not vote for. That is not the one and only issue that I base my voting on. But that doesn't mean I'm fine with voting in yet another God-bothering theocratic, whatever. There are problems with it. I'm choosing the better of whatever options are presented to me to vote for me. That's it.
So you would vote for a politician, like I said, that believes in Santa Claus, Easter Bunny?
No, I didn't say that. Why is it that Anthony, you ask a question, we answer it, then you mischaracterize our answer and we clarify, and then you mischaracterize our answer again. You didn't ask me if I'd vote for someone who actually believed in Santa Claus, did you?
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Matt. That's the question. Would you?
I have no idea, because when I'm evaluating politicians, it would never occur to me to ask them or care much about whether or not they believe in Santa Claus. What I'm concerned about are their policies and what they're going to do for the United States. So I'm hoping you hurry up and get to the point where I'm hypocritical. Otherwise, it just seems like you're confused about what our position is, because even after telling you twice, you intentionally mischaracterized it twice.
Well, I apologize. Maybe I misunderstood. But by hypocritical, what I'm trying to say is, like, I understand you guys' beliefs that you're atheists, you're not asserting that there's no God or whatever. But in your heart of hearts, like, if someone put a gun to your head, obviously you would say, no, I don't think there's a God. Am I correct with that?
Correct. Well, no, I don't know, because if the person putting their gun to my head said, "Tell me that you believe in a God or I'm going to shoot you," then I'm going to say, "Yes, I believe in a God." Can you just ask a straightforward, honest question instead of asking these questions that are designed to show something? Because I don't want to be a prick, but you're doing a really bad job. You asked us if we'd vote for somebody who believed in God. We said yes. You mischaracterized that. We clarified it. You mischaracterized that. And now we're going on about what we would do with a gun to our head. This is not the what would you do with a gun to your head experience show. What's the point we're trying to get to?
Was to demonstrate that the point I'm trying to get to is if you had to make an absolute definitive answer, if you had to give somebody an answer, do you believe in God or not? You would say, no,
I don't believe in God. I don't have to think about it for a second.
I want to know why it matters so much to you.
Yeah, he called in to point out we're hypocritical, and yet he's asking questions and getting nowhere. So what do we need to do, Anthony?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to explain it, but I don't know if I'm not thoroughly explaining or not. By using the analogy of a politician who believes in Christianity versus a politician who believes in Zuzu, the space god or whatever, obviously you're going to find one more outrageous than the other, correct?
So here, let me help you, Anthony. If I knew nothing else about a candidate, you want to know, am I more likely to vote for a candidate who believes in the Christian God or a candidate who believes in, let's say, Scientology, if I knew nothing else about them?
Exactly.
Right? If that's all I knew, I would vote for the Christian, only because we can demonstrate that Scientology is a fictionally invented religion in our lifetime. And that is not as easy to do with Christianity. And I know that the most people who identify as Christian aren't really worried that much about God or religion or promoting religion. That's just a function of their culture. It's like voting for someone who watched Saturday morning cartoons growing up. That's just who you are. However, I'm never going to be in a position, I hope, where I'm being asked to vote for someone and the only thing I know about them is whether they like Jesus or Xenu. So why do we need a fictional scenario? Because if there was a Christian and an atheist running, and that's all I knew about both of them, I would vote for the atheist. But if I know more about them, I would vote for many Christians over many atheists. Now that we've discussed how I go about voting, which is based primarily on policy and not about whether or not somebody's religion, please get to the point about where we're hypocritical.
The point of, when I say you're hypocritical, it goes for not just for Matt and Jenna, this goes for the atheist community in general. And
that can't be true then, because the atheist community in general doesn't agree on everything. But stop with the preamble and get to the accusation.
Well, there's no preamble, Matt. I've already made
all of this is no. All of this is preamble. Please tell me what we're hypocritical about.
Okay, just for example, the fact that you the Mormon God or the Mormon.
Nope, sorry, I'm done with you. I don't see any point to that call. We are not solving any problems. We are not fixing anything.
By the way, you can email TV and Atheist Community, and if you come up with a point where we're hypocritical, that's fine. But I don't know how long that call was.
Too long. But when you think about all of these hypothetical situations, what would you do if this really extreme scenario happened? Well, I'm not worried about it because that's a really extreme scenario, so it's not very likely to happen. I'm more likely to think about things that are really going to happen.
Yeah. So, you know what else is more likely? I'm aging, and what's more likely is that at some point in the future, I may become addled, mentally defective or deficient at some point. I may eventually, like Anthony Flew and some others, find myself advocating for God belief. But the reason that I'll have done it is because I will have lost my faculties and my ability to reason. And at that point, the atheist community of Austin and everybody else should make sure that I'm taken care of and not out on a stage providing ammunition to people like Anthony who think there's something hypocritical about, you voted for a Christian. Yes. You know what? I love many Christians. I have many Christians in my family. I don't hate Christians. I despise Christianity. I don't hate the religious. I despise their religion and what their religions do. And I don't know. if you genuinely think there's something hypocritical, then it should be easy to make that case and not just go, well, would you vote for this? Well, would you vote for that? Well, would you vote for that?
Yeah, let's talk about realistic scenarios and try to prepare ourselves for things that can actually happen. Let's talk to Dimitri in California. It says that the best argument for God is fine-tuning. This is familiar. How are you doing, Dimitri?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Hi, I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Pretty good. Let's
Doing
talk
well,
about
thanks.
the fine-tuning argument. How can you defend it?
Okay, so I should probably first explain what's meant by fine-tuning, because I think different people kind of understand it a little bit differently. But the way I'm using this term is basically the same way that it's used in physics. So fine-tuning means that there are like certain fundamental constants and quantities that enter in the like equations of fundamental physics, something like the speed of light, the mass of the electron, and so on. And so what's meant by fine-tuning is, so it's the idea that if those constants were a little bit different from what they actually are, then we could show that the universe would be such that complex structures would not be able to form. And of course, complex structures are necessary for life to exist.
Can I clarify and see if I understand what you're saying? Are you saying that if everything wasn't the way it is, then it wouldn't be that way?
No, because that would be a tautology. No, so we find ourselves in a universe where those constants and quantities are such that complex structures are possible. And of course, we being alive, we are complex structures.
Sure. So the first question, Dmitry, is, do we have evidence to show that it could have been any other way? No. The answer is no. I'm going to save you the time and say the entire argument. If you think that we have evidence that it could have been another way, that's simply not true. We have no other universes to investigate. We can't rewind the clock. We cannot show that it was possible for the foundations of physics, for the things that you want to point to in physics as fine-tuning, that it's not possible that they could. We can't show that it's possible they could have been another way. And if we were to go through the hypothetical set of possibilities, yes, of course, it is in fact a tautology to say that the universe is fine-tuned for what the universe is. That is tautology, as long as you're not suggesting that the fine-tuning is anything other than agreeance with. If you're suggesting that it was fine-tuned by some sort of external decision, you would have to demonstrate that, which hasn't been demonstrated. And if we took a list of all the potential universes that could have existed, or that if we go with, the not an epistemic possibility, but a logical possibility, if we go through all the logically possible universes, then there are infinitely many where something is changed slightly that still allows for complex structures, that results in a completely different state of affairs now qua now, in which case there would be some other life form sitting here going, man, the universe is fine-tuned for me and for complex structures. And so there's no way to solve this issue other than to say, here's the state of the universe. We understand some of the physics that led to this in both a deterministic sense and otherwise. We don't know if it could have been any other way. And so the argument that it's incredibly unlikely that it should have been this way and therefore had guidance fails, because it may be 100% likely that this is the only universe that could have possibly resulted in an intelligence recognizing it.
Okay, so yes, a lot of things. Okay, so I should address some of them. So you said that there is no evidence whatsoever that the universe could have been any other way, right?
I don't see how there could be any evidence that the universe could be any other way. Do you have some ability to rewind the clock and show how it could have gone a different way?
No, but
okay, then I win.
Not exactly, because for example, if we look at what theoretical physicists are saying, most of them, if not all of them, believe that this fine-tuning is actually something that really cries out for explanation.
Yes, but hang on. So the fine-tuning within physics that you're saying they want an explanation for, these physicists, how many of them believe in a personal God?
I don't know, probably not a lot.
Probably not a lot. How many of them are advocating that a personal God or any God is the best scientific solution to the fine-tuning problem?
Again, not a lot.
Should there be anyone suggesting that a God is the best scientific explanation for the theoretical physical notion of fine-tuning?
Sure, there should be.
Why should there be? Because within science, we only get to appeal to the sort of answers that we can demonstrate are real. You don't even get to include God as a candidate explanation. Science has ruled out the supernatural as acceptable. I mean, ruled it out as acceptable, meaning supernatural explanations are unacceptable within science because we cannot confirm them. So within science, my position is no good scientist should ever say that a God is the best scientific explanation for fine-tuning, because you can't put God within science.
I've tried,
but that doesn't mean that, for example, other people or even scientists who are currently not doing science but just thinking about the universe in general can't believe that God is.
I didn't say that. What I said was I'm looking for scientific explanations. I'm not looking for magical explanations, because I want evidence that is supported. I want explanations that are supported by evidence, not just asserted. And so that's why I like science. And science cannot make appeals to the supernatural. It's based on methodological naturalism. And so science currently, until there's a paradigm shift, no good science could ever claim a supernatural explanation is the best scientific explanation. That is impossible within science as it is now.
Yes, of course, because that's
I went again.
Science only operate. Well, not really, because
yes, really. I keep saying things that you keep agreeing are correct. So it'd be best if you moved on to the parts that are incorrect.
Well, I was just going to point that out. So
Okay.
I think we can agree that science cannot, use non-scientific explanations like God, but that doesn't mean that, philosophers or just some rational people can't think.
So it's like you're not even listening, Dmitry. I didn't say that philosophers couldn't, and I didn't say that other people couldn't. I'm talking about whether or not they should. And that gets to the question of, do you have an explanation that isn't within the realm of science? If you do, you have to show why someone should accept that.
I'd like to know how you know anything is true. How do you know something is true? Anything.
Well, I guess I look at the evidence, and I also use a priori reasoning, just logic.
So logic and evidence. How do you get this evidence? For so let's say I'm telling you that I have I've used this before, a Camaro outside that runs on milk. Why should you believe me or not?
No, I shouldn't, because that's
why
implausible.
How do you know it's impossible?
Well,
he said implausible. But
implausible.
It was a hiccup in audio.
Okay. So do you agree that that is an extraordinary claim, and that's why you should not believe it?
Yes, of course.
Right. It's not impossible, right? We don't know if that's ever going to be a thing, but it's implausible, like you said. So we're not going to believe it. You're not going to say, well, there might be, right? You're just going to say, no, I don't believe you.
I mean, I can say there might be, but I can just say it's very unlikely.
Right. So you're just going to stop it. I don't think so, right?
What if Jenna said her car ran on the disembodied spirits of the dead?
Dmitry? Did we lose you?
I think we got cut off. So I was saying that that's even less likely.
How do you? No.
The argument.
How can Dmitry? I'm trying to save you from yourself. If you claim that A is less likely than B, that means that there must be some way to calculate the relative probabilities of those. How did you calculate the probability that she has a car that runs on milk? How did you calculate the probability that she has a car that runs on the spirits of the deceased? Because I don't know how to calculate the second one at all.
Well, I don't think you even know how to calculate the first one, right?
I absolutely do. Because that is actually a testable claim. I can walk out to her car and she can present me with milk, which I can scientifically verify is milk, and I can put it in the car and I can test it and I can inspect it. The claim that I have a car that runs on milk is a falsifiable, testable claim.
That's true. Yeah, I meant.
Yeah. And so how do you test whether or not a car runs on the spirits of the deceased? So it seems like every time I raise an objection that you haven't thought about, you agree with me, and then you want to tell me how I'm wrong again. So explain to us how you know that it's less probable that Jenna's car runs on the spirits of the deceased than that it runs on milk.
Well, okay, so I can definitely try to explain, but I think we've kind of strayed very far from the fine tune.
We're making a point. Please bear with us.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no problem. So I think I don't obviously have a way to calculate these probabilities.
Thank you. So I'm right again. Can we move on now?
Well, so that's the point, is that you don't have a way to calculate that. And what we're saying...
Point, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, that's my point. And so the point is that we don't have a way to calculate that this God exists. We don't have a way to calculate that. So we're going to say, you know what? It's improbable. We don't think so. Right?
Sorry, I dropped something on the floor.
Well, I think the conclusion that you just said doesn't follow from what you said before that. You said that we can't calculate the probability of God, and therefore we should say that that's, I forgot what the words you used, but I think you said, therefore we should say that it's unlikely.
I'm not.
Doesn't really follow.
Tell me. I'm not saying anything. I'm wondering why you think we can calculate that. How can we? I'm asking you to demonstrate how we can calculate this God. How we can verify, just like we can verify it if that car runs on milk.
See, because right now, and I'm going to let you do this, but right now, we have this process by which we can evaluate the future events based on past events. And so while I don't have an exhaustive understanding of you, what I do know is that you have repeatedly been wrong or misrepresented. And then when you said, then you pretended as if you could calculate something and determine it was less likely than something else. And when I showed that was wrong, now you're going to go on to try and do it with God. And I'm going to predict that you're either going to end up with agreeing with me that there's no way to calculate the likelihood of God, or you're going to present something that demonstrates that you're trying to calculate something which is fundamentally identical to the spirits of the deceased that you just admitted you couldn't calculate.
Okay, so first of all, you guys probably know what Bayesian reasoning is, right?
I don't.
I do, but it doesn't matter.
Yep.
We're asking, you just admitted that you had no way of calculating the odds that the spirits of the deceased were powering a car. And now we're asking, how can you, what is your evidence and what is your justification for calculating the odds that a God exists? And how is that God different from spirits of the deceased from our perspective?
Okay, so I think both are similar, but so I think we're getting a little bit confused. So nobody really has a way to calculate this probability, but...
Which probability? The probability that a God exists?
Both of them.
Okay, thank you for agreeing with me and being right again. Therefore, I have no reason to continue talking to you, because if you can't show how likely something is, then you are wasting your time arguing that it is the best explanation or that it is a more likely explanation. As far as I can see, the notion that a God is responsible for the universe is right up there with the notion that the spirits of the dead power Jenna's car, or that underwear gnomes are stealing my underwear, or that magical universe creating pixies farted out this particular universe. It's a waste of time to continue when you're going to claim that you can demonstrate things and then point out that you actually can't.
Okay, so I think maybe I can clarify a little bit. So when we're doing probabilistic reasoning, what we do is we start with some sort of...
No, sir.
Probability.
Dmitry, go watch my debates with Blake Junta. Blake is a fabulous proponent of Bayesian probabilistics. And we've had this discussion before. You have no priors when it comes to God. Bayesian analysis is misapplied when it is used to try to demonstrate the existence of something for which you have no priors. I'm not wasting any more time on this because I've debated this Bayesian analysis of God over and over, and you can go watch it online rather than wasting our audience's time.
Yeah. I'm curious. Sorry, we dropped him. I'm curious. Let's talk to Cindy in Belgium. It says you need help with a theist argument against deductive and inductive arguments. Is that correct?
Hey, Cindy.
Guys, hi. So yeah, I guess Jenna and I we know each other. So I don't know if you recognize me, but anyway. I have a channel talking about critical thinking. I've been educating myself on this subject for the last, 6 years. If everything goes well, I should be able to teach it in a few months. And lately I've had a debate with two theists, and they didn't seem to understand the difference between inductive and deductive argument. And when I explained that basically, the strength of the premises is the difference between the two. They didn't seem to agree, and
I don't agree.
You don't agree?
No, it's not about the strength of the premises. Deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning, the strength of the premises aren't there. It's an entirely different process. A deductive argument is like a strict logical syllogism where there's premise one, premise two, conclusion, where the conclusion is that's why it's called direct reasoning, directly derived from the premises. Inductive reasoning there's deductive, inductive, and abductive. And abductive is arguing towards the best explanation. And for that, you would need candidate explanations. But inductive reasoning is what science does. It begins with observations and then begins to describe the best model that is consistent with those information. At no point is it making any proclamation about truth, but it's not just about the strength of the premises, because you can have a deductive argument with flawed premises and then you just throw the argument out. I might have misunderstood though, because so the thing is, with a deductive argument, if the premises are accepted, the conclusion has to be accepted. We know for a fact that true premises in a deductive argument necessarily lead to a true conclusion. Deductive arguments lead to essentially maximal certainty. An inductive argument is not certain at all. It is probable. It is basically an argument that this is the most reasonable understanding given the available evidence, but it's not about certainty.
Yeah, I think it's a difference of perspective, because the way I see it, deductive argument. By the way, I based my understanding mostly on one of the books you recommended, the Concise Introduction to Logic.
Yeah,
and it says that a deductive argument, you have two premises, one conclusion. If the premises are true, then the conclusion has to be accepted. It is impossible for the conclusion to be false if the premises are true.
Right.
And in an inductive argument, it is unlikely for the conclusion to be true if the premises are false, if the premises are true. So
no. Inductive argument allows for the possibility that there's no certainty that the conclusion is true. But the inductive process is the thing, not the premises. The individual premises are irrelevant, because in every argument, you begin with the assumption that if these premises are true, what does that tell us about the conclusion? And in deductive arguments, it tells us the conclusion must be true as well. In an inductive argument, it's about really the conclusion is probably true, but it could still be false. And you can do that because how am I best to explain this? There's no requirement that logic talk about true premises. Essentially, if you accept premise one and premise two in a deductive logic of valid structure, If you accept them, then you must accept the conclusion or you're being irrational. It is possible in an inductive argument to accept the premises and not accept the conclusion because you don't think that the argument vies for a particularly strong conclusion, because inductive arguments, the conclusion is not necessarily true. But I don't know, if you and I reading the same book aren't making any headway here, why are you bothering to have a conversation with theists about the difference between deductive and inductive arguments? It's not like they have either deductive or inductive arguments. They have at best abductive arguments and really poor ones.
I was debunking the Kalam cosmological argument, and regularly theists tend to.
So the Kalam cosmological argument doesn't need to be debunked. It could be completely true, and it doesn't tell us anything about a God. The Kalam cosmological argument does not contain God in its premises or otherwise. It's a deductive argument that if you accept the premises, you should accept the conclusion. But the conclusion of the Kalam is, therefore, the universe has a cause. It doesn't tell you what the cause is.
True, but the premises are not true. Well, they can't be proven to be true.
I agree. The premises for the Kalam, by the way, is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence, which is dubious. Then the second premise is the universe began to exist, which is dubious. And then the conclusion is, therefore, the universe had a cause for its existence. The thing is, it's dubious from start to finish. But even if we were to accept it, that wouldn't tell us anything about the cause, about whether it's a God or not. So people using Kalam as an argument for God still have all of their work in front of them, even after their weak-ass abductive argument.
Sure. Well, can I go to my question then?
Yeah.
So the answer I had was, if you go to the most deductive argument example given, which is all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. He said, well, you cannot prove that Socrates was a man. You cannot.
No. Okay, this is easy, Cindy. You are wasting your time with someone who does not understand.
Yeah, I am.
Because
I know, but
so here, this is easy. So that is the most straightforward. You're right. That is probably the most famous deductive argument ever. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is immoral. If the person you're talking to comes back and says, you can't prove Socrates is a man, they're not talking about the argument or the structure at all. They're rejecting a premise. And anybody can reject premises all day long. I can say, as one of my premises for the argument is that underwear gnomes are real. Well, that doesn't mean they are. And if somebody rejects it, they reject it. But if somebody rejects the notion that Socrates is a man, they're a special kind of confused and uninformed, because no one is saying there's actually a Socrates that is actually a man. I could have a dog named Socrates, which doesn't change the fact the Socrates in your hypothetical argument is a man. You are declaring it to be so. The person you're talking to has no capacity to understand things in the abstract. And that's where the problem is. And there's a lot of people who don't have that capacity to understand things in the abstract.
I didn't either. I had to stop it. Well, why would I go there?
Yeah.
I would say, why? Why think about
if you
that?
present a sample syllogism. So really what you should probably do is replace everything in the syllogism. Instead of going, all men are created mortal, you should say all X's are Y's. J is an X, therefore J is also a Y. And now when you present that exact same syllogism, which is fundamentally identical to the Socrates one, the person coming back to you should, if they say, well, you can't prove that J is an X, now you know you're dealing with someone who cannot deal in the abstract, and they will never understand a logical argument. They just...
Well, I don't know about never.
If you can't understand the abstract, then how that has to be understood in order to understand the argument.
Well, so personally, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the abstract, and that's why I couldn't. But I had to practice. I had to expose myself, and so
right. But true. I'm not suggesting that because someone doesn't currently understand the abstract that they will never understand the abstract. I should not have even hinted at that. What I'm saying is, if you keep coming to them with the abstract and they keep objecting to that, there's nothing else to do other than teach them how to understand the abstract.
Yeah. Does that help, Cindy?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm very, very happy for you, Jenna. You know, I'm going through the same process. So,
yay!
He's trying to adopt.
It goes well.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit more complicated for me, but yeah, hope it goes very well for you. And I'll see you later.
I'm waiting for Jenna to start the Atheist Moms podcast.
Oh, that's a good idea. I might have to do some kind of blogging or something.
Keep track of everything, even if you don't put it up publicly. Because I watched a really cool video yesterday, and it was someone who essentially they're 20 years old, and their family started taking pictures of them at consistent intervals. And so they have pictures on a timeline. It's like an 18-minute video.
Ah.
No sound, no nothing. Just here's a picture of them, not necessarily every day, but at frequent intervals for 20 years. And it was really compelling because you could see not only the physical changes of a baby and the face getting longer and the eye color changing and, you know, the hair and this other stuff. And, oh my gosh, here they are when they, you know, they've got some spots on their face, so they're entering, you know, teenage, and they've got, you know, acne and whatever else. And then there would occasionally you'd have a picture where it was obvious that they were just sobbing, did not want to be taking that picture, but it was over, and it was like click, 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 and it's great. I wish, like, if I was to have a kid tomorrow, I would definitely do that and 20 other things just like it.
Right. With the technology that we have today, you know, growing up, it's like you have this scrapbook that you go through like once every couple of years, right? You know, but now we have so many ways to log. We have so many portals. This is just
holy
awesome.
crap. Do you realize, Jenna, that we have 5 calls on hold? All of them are theists, and there's 8 minutes left in the show.
Jesus, we need this show.
Apologies to whoever we don't get to, but we're gonna do our best to try to get to as many as you can in the last few minutes. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to rush a bit.
Let's go to John in Georgia. What are free will? Are we not responsible for what we believe and do? What do you think?
Yes. Me personally, I think we are, but and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you believe in predeterminism, predestination. Do you? I mean, can you explain that?
Me? I'm a determinist. I believe that everything happens because something else happened first.
And I am, generally speaking, willing to accept that the universe appears to be largely deterministic, and that the only room outside of determinism doesn't allow for things like libertarian free will at all. So,
okay. Well, going off of that, that's real simple, and it might be silly, but are we really just determined to, like for me, for example, am I determined to believe in God, and are you determined to not believe in God? You get what I'm asking?
yeah. So at this particular moment, do you believe in God?
I'm holding on to it. I'm questioning.
So, but it's a simple thing. Do you believe the earth is round?
Yes.
Then I believe that you were determined, that was a deterministic thing that led to you being convinced that the earth is round, but that does not mean that you cannot change your mind. So other things could happen that could convince you otherwise, and then you could believe that the earth is flat, and you would be just as wrong as most of the people who are advocating, or all of the people who are advocating for that. What you believe could be an unavoidable consequence of everything that's happened up to you up to now. But the good news is it doesn't have to end now, which means you could have walked into this conversation completely deterministically believing that a God exists. And then because of something Jenna says, you leave this conversation no longer believing that. That was still deterministic. It doesn't change the fact that there was an interaction that you as a thinking agent evaluated and then changed your mind.
It doesn't imply more than that there's someone else controlling it. It just stops there.
Oh, yes. And I agree. I don't think no one's controlling whether I believe or not,
and the notions of fatalism
would be
mean that whatever ends up being the end of your life was most likely determined from the beginning of the cosmos. But you're not there yet.
My last question to you, Matt, would be, are we ultimately responsible for our beliefs and actions, being that they were determined from the get-go?
So you don't choose what you believe in any simple sense. That's my view. I do not believe that anyone chooses to believe something. You either are convinced or you're not convinced. You can be convinced for good reasons or bad reasons. That said, I am responsible for my actions in the sense that I am the bag of meat and thought processes that took a particular action. If I go out and back my truck up into the street and run into somebody else's car, I am the person who did that. And irrespective of whether it was deterministic or not, I am going to be held responsible for that and should be. The fact that the universe is deterministic doesn't change where we put responsibility. As a matter of fact, to the extent that I'm held responsible, that was deterministic as well. And so was whether or not I make amends or how I make amends.
Okay. I guess I would have to grapple with that some. It just don't click with me yet that.
That's all right. I'll tell you this, John.
Yeah.
It doesn't click with almost anyone. It is this, my ex-wife who heard me say this hundreds of times will go to her deathbed believing that she has free will and not giving a crap about the philosophical arguments, because to her, it feels like she has free will. She has, and you know what? It feels like that to me. It feels like I have the freest will I can imagine, which is why I recommend Dan Dennett has a couple of different books. One is called Elbow Room, the varieties of free will worth wanting, which I think is outstanding, which deals a little bit about determinism and free will. Dan is a compatibilist who believes that we have something we can call free will. I agree with him. The people who are saying that Dan is redefining free will to suit his own needs, I think they're right. I just think that's what we're all doing. And so I've never believed, or I haven't believed in libertarian free will in ages. I believe that we have will, and I believe it's as free as it could be. But if somebody's saying it's free, as in it's not deterministic, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for the explanation. Y'all have a good day.
Thanks, you too, John.
Thanks.
All right. Let's see if we can get some more quick calls done.
Yeah.
We kept some short ones. So
Preston in Utah, why don't we accept creation and resurrection claims?
Oh, I'm so glad to be on today.
Yay! Thanks for calling.
It's the easiest question I've ever had, because somebody says, Matt, why don't you believe the creation or the resurrection? It's really easy because there isn't sufficient evidence to warrant belief.
Yes, I haven't been on your show before, but I've listened to your show a lot. Maybe I haven't listened enough to hear these particular arguments that I'm bringing up. I'm assuming that you have opinions on them, but I just couldn't find them. So I wanted to hear them. So I know that physics doesn't require a God. I completely understand that. You could put a totally godless universe together based on the laws of physics. Mm-hmm. However, I'm sure you're familiar with the, I guess, the metaphor of if I put $10 into a drawer and then $10 in tomorrow, and then the next day I open the drawer and there's nothing in there, it's not because the laws of physics or the math was broken. It's because there was an outside interaction. So if something happens...
No, I've never heard that metaphor. Is that a famous metaphor?
You kind of understand it, though?
I get it. If I put $10 in a drawer and I come back and it's missing, something happened to that $10. Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't math that was broken. It was an outside force. So,
well, I don't know that it was an outside force. Something happened. I need an explanation. If I put $10 in this drawer right here and I come back later and it's gone, I need an explanation for it. I don't know what the candidate explanations are yet, although I can start listing some. At no point would I be justified in claiming that there's a supernatural candidate until somebody demonstrates a supernatural candidate that should be included on the list.
Yeah. I guess what I'm just saying is, if your $10 goes missing, it's not that money just disappears sometimes. Somebody took it.
Except no. This is the problem. You have decided what the candidate explanations are, and you have honed in on the one that you think is most likely. Well, the fact of the matter is, I have, in fact, lost money in a drawer where no one else was involved. And it's because of the mechanisms of a drawer and air, where a loose bill in that drawer, if it's opened or opened too quickly, that can cause it to adhere up, fall back behind, and now it's no longer in the drawer, even though no other person was involved. It's not worth it. We are agency detection machines, and we are really prone to seeing agency. If you think that every time something goes missing, the most likely explanation is that somebody's taken it or fucking with you, that's paranoia. There are other explanations.
Yeah.
This is what magicians
I apologize.
expect and make use of. Magicians are, all we do is use your assumptions against you. That's it. All I do as a magician, I know something you don't know, and I know how to exploit it. That's it. And and it's so easy because we all do it to ourselves, and you just did it with a $10 bill in a drawer.
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion. I'm just using that as an example, I guess, of something that's been brought up before.
Sure.
My real argument is how life could be created given the laws of entropy.
So first of all, you don't get to use the word created.
Okay, how it could come about.
Right. And so when we ask that question right now, the answer is, I don't know. And anybody who wants to say they do know has to demonstrate evidence for their proposed thing. Just like you would have to say, if the $10 went missing and you think that somebody stole it, you have to present evidence for that. There are other candidate explanations. And until we have sufficient evidence to tell which of the candidates is the likely one, the only position we should be holding is that we don't know what happened to that $10 and that we don't know how life began. That's it. And if I can demonstrate that, see, here's the problem, is that you thought you came up with a solid example where I would just say, yep, somebody took it. Well, you didn't. You came up with an example for which I can come up with a number of different explanations, and none of them are supernatural. So I have a bunch of explanations for a missing $10, and at no point did I have to say God did it. But you're looking at the world going, hey, I need candidate explanations for why there's life. And then you say, a bunch of people think that a God did it, so I'll just count that as a candidate explanation. Well, you're ignoring all the people who think that universe farting pixies did it. You have already biased yourself towards a potential explanation when there isn't good evidence for that explanation at all.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you right, you're saying that although it seems like life appearing goes against the laws of entropy, that doesn't mean that it was created by a supernatural force.
I'm not even convinced it goes against the laws of entropy.
Okay, because you're saying that we don't quite understand them because we haven't completely uncovered all of science.
Well, entropy is a very specific category for thermal energy in a system. Now, considering we live here on Earth, first of all, we don't necessarily know that life originated on Earth or under what conditions. We don't know, and if it did, because it could be, panspermia is not outside the question. There are things that didn't originate on Earth that are now on Earth. We know that to be the case. There are a number of different category explanations or potential explanations. The study of abiogenesis has shown in the Miller-Urey experiments, not how it happened, but that it could happen, or that this is not remotely implausible. There are other scientists working on this issue of abiogenesis, but entropy applies to an isolated system, and yet the Earth is constantly receiving energy from the sun. So it's not an isolated system. So
yeah, I like that. That's great.
And I'm not even, somebody's going to already email. Somebody already emailed me the other day to say, no, it's not about a closed system. It's about an isolated system. So I'm trying to correct that. But if you say that the life arising on Earth is in violation of the laws of physics, is in violation of empathy, then that's something that you should present a paper on and get a Nobel Prize, because I'm not convinced that that's the case. But even if I assume that you're correct and we don't have an explanation for how life could arise, and it seems to be in conflict with notions like entropy, that doesn't tell us what the right answer is, does it?
You're right. Yeah.
It's the curse of my life, being right.
I have a second question if you have time for it.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Well, I just want to say that I'm not here to prove myself right or anything. I really want to understand your point of view. So that's why I'm asking these questions.
I appreciate that.
Second one is about the resurrection. The interesting thing is, as I've listened to the show, it's sometimes come up that some atheists don't believe that Jesus was even a real person, but that he could be more than one person combined into some kind of historical figure.
I think I've said that.
Other explanations like that. Okay.
Could be.
Well, it seems like, this could be kind of the same argument as entropy, that we don't know and things like that. But what about the fact that it is less likely for a person's enemy to acknowledge a virtue in that person than their friend would be,
I get that. Please point to any enemy of Jesus that ever acknowledged anything.
Well, I guess what I'm just specifically pointing at is, what do you think about the fact that, in general, the Jews claimed that Jesus never was resurrected? Of course, they claim that his body was stolen.
That is one of many candidate explanations for the story. Some Jews believe that, but I'm not convinced that there was a body, let alone a body to be stolen.
Okay, so why? Let's see.
But I can't rule it out. Here's the thing:
if a group of people who don't even like Jesus would say that his body was stolen, therefore,
who are these people? Name one Jew who ever said that the body was stolen, who had access to the information. The fact that, so here's what happened. Somebody told a story about Jesus, and as it spread, other people said, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? So we have no information. So first of all, we have no original copies of anything written in the New Testament, which means everything in the New Testament is a copy of a copy to begin with. We don't know who wrote a good chunk of them, and we have no way to investigate any of them. And so the people who were like, here are some Jews who are claiming that the reason the tomb was empty was because the body was stolen. You cannot point to any of those Jews. You cannot interview any of those Jews. That's like me saying, hey, I really didn't do it, and I have 10 friends who can vouch for me and 3 friends who suggest that they know somebody else who stole the body, but I'm not going to let you talk to any of them. Mm-hmm. You're believing stories about stories about stories, and you're counting it. You actually use the word fact. There is nothing within the Christ story in the New Testament, including his birth, miracles, death, or resurrection, which is an actual demonstrable fact. Nothing. Now, in that situation, the stories that you're talking to, see, okay, Saul had a Damascus Road experience, changed his name to Paul. He wrote some books, but there are books in the New Testament that are attributed to Paul, which we know are forgeries, and know were written by somebody else. And then you have all these stories saying, there are Jews that suggest we stole the body, but we didn't. Well, congratulations. Please provide what the actual story was. Because when you start saying, I believe Jesus was bodily resurrected, and there are people out there who claim we stole the body, but we definitely didn't do that. Nobody in that room at that moment should believe it, let alone people 2,000 years later reading about it from anonymous accounts that are copies of copies of translations of copies.
Okay. Yeah, I think I understand that. All right. So I just have a quick question. So are you looking for proof? Or, it seems like no amount of evidence is going to be enough.
That seems to be absolutely dishonest, and I'm going to let you go and think about what you just said, because the fact of the matter is Jenna and I will believe anything when there's sufficient evidence. And what you've done and what everybody else has done for the entire history of these arguments is present no evidence, none at all. And when we point this out, you guys keep saying, it just seems like no amount of evidence can ever convince you guys. That is the most dishonest shit I've ever heard. It's not our fault that you believe things for which you cannot and will not present actual evidence. How dare you sit here and keep acknowledging that, oh yeah, I understand, and that makes sense, and I'm just trying to understand, but it seems like no amount of evidence would ever convince you. Well, fuck right on off. And I didn't even have to yell that because Jenna's pregnant.
Thank you for calling. It sounds like he's really questioning, and I admire that.
I get it. It's just so frustrating when people are like, well, clearly. So when they ask, what would convince you? And I say, I don't know, but if there's a God, he knows. But all I'm really looking for is not proof, which is a mathematical concept. It's evidence. And so if somebody said to you, I have a friend who claimed to be divine. He was killed by a bunch of people, and 3 days later, he rose from the dead. And they said that today. The types of questions we would be asking are, okay, where is this person? Can I talk to them? And how do I know that they were killed? Let's compile the evidence, because this seems inconsistent with reality. And that's if it were happening right now. If Jenna, who I love and adore, said that her best friend just came back from the dead, I would not believe her. I would want evidence. And if she said, well, I can't provide any evidence, but you're just too skeptical, and I don't think any amount of evidence would convince you, I would be a little bit worried about my friend's rationality. If my friend says this and isn't talking about an actual friend of theirs that they investigated, but a story from an anonymous author that they read, which has been passed around for thousands of years, why on earth is that more believable?
And if you're trying to justify this and you're trying to convince people of this, and at every turn they just say, I'm not convinced, I'm not convinced, I'm not convinced, and you just can't get past that, I'm wondering why you're convinced.
Yeah.
So. On
that note, Jenna, thank you. First of all, congratulations. I could not be happier for you. So was everybody in chat. You are a beautiful, warm, and bubbly person all the time. And so watching the hormones make you alternate. At one point, you did something where somebody in chat was like, wow, Jenna just went full Matt. And I was like,
well,
I'm trying to keep the peace. But I'm so happy for you. Please yell at me if there's anything I can do or any way that I can help out. And we appreciate everybody who tuned in today, everybody who donated. By the way, you can still click the donate link up above there. Anybody who's supportive of the AC and the AC's mission, you can go to atheist-community.org. The website is under sub revamp, and so I can't vouch that everything's working right now. But you can email tv@atheist-community.org. Most of you, some of you listening to me, I don't like you. I mean, it's just a fact. There are people out there who are listening to me right now who don't like me, and I don't like them, and that's fine. Mostly, though, even if I don't care about each individual, I care about humanity. I care about what kind of world we're going to wake up in. Over the next week in the United States, things could get really terrible, or they could get really good. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. Tempers are running high. Walmart has stopped selling guns. There are people on both sides who are advocating for potential violence. For my friends outside of the United States who are sharing in some of the terror and concern that we're experiencing here, don't panic. Don't freak out. We appreciate your help. And many of us are here trying to make sure that we, keep the peace and keep moving forward. It is an incredibly difficult time and a difficult year for everybody. And this election is not going to make it any easier. Take the extra step of trying to diffuse as much as you can and to try to be as reasonable and compassionate as you can. I along with anybody else, completely understand the frustrations from COVID, from elections, from, just the general frustration in the world. Nobody's going to get it right all the time. I'm not suggesting that I'm fine with, yelling when it's called for. I'm fine with blocking when it's called for. I'm hanging up. but things could get ugly. And try to keep in mind that we're still talking about people. Keep yourself safe. Vote if you're eligible to vote. Stand by to see what happens with the rest of the world in the near future. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.